What's good, people? It's about that time to randomly relate reverse rants. No hate. So, I'm going to talk about two fights, of course, in this video, as opposed to making two separate videos. First off, Caleb Plant losing to Armando Resendez. I see why it can be considered an upset in terms of who was more well known and who wasn't. I'm not quick to call a fighter upset though, if I understand that that fighter is skillful. You know, like it's one thing if a fighter looks lackluster and then all of a sudden they just show up one day and fight way better than anybody ever thought. But then if you go back and start to look at their fights, you'll go, oh shit, this dude actually can fight, you know. And it's not about popularity. I mean, Dimitri Bivol, hardly anybody thought he had a chance to beat Canelo. That's what this fight kind of reminded me of in a lot of ways, because Bivol kept a tight defense, kept it basic, and just dominated, and Canelo couldn't do anything with him. Now, Caleb Plant, I respect the fact he's taking this like a man. He's not making any excuses, and hopefully he just keeps it that way. He said he spent a lot of money on his training camp. He said he had a great training camp. He's got to go back to the drawing board. That's it. Leave it alone. No excuses. We don't want to hear nothing 2 weeks from now about, you know, anything. I was dehydrated. I felt this. I felt that. The fact people was saying that Armando was going to be too small for this weight class. Now, you could see the size difference between the two of them. And that's probably what kept Caleb from going down with some of them shots he got rocked with, because he, you know, the guy is strong enough to hurt him and buzz him, but not really, you know, crazy power to just get him out. Not saying he couldn't if you'd, you know, but it's times where you could see, like, yeah, if this dude was a natural 168 pounder, like, if he really had that true 168 pounder type power, probably would have knocked Caleb Plant out. And y'all know I like Caleb Plant as a fighter, but you know, Caleb said it was a close fight. It could have went either way. That's horse shit. There's no way that fight was close. That judge that gave Caleb the fight, he should never judge a fight. He or she, whoever the fuck they were, they should never judge a fight again, man. Like, seriously. Or they need to be honestly right. You know, they should take these judges and truly, you know, give them a refresher course, man, so they know what the hell they're doing. But we know politics, lies, and bullshit goes with boxing, unfortunately, just like anything else. So there's always going to be some dirt and some injustice. You have people that will rob a fighter just for the sake of making a rematch, because there's a lot of money involved and all that kind of nonsense. But, yeah, this wasn't a close fight, man. Caleb got his ass kicked, and that's that. But, you know, hey, man, on to the next one, you know. One of the things I didn't think was a good idea, history repeated itself, okay? We saw Jer.all Miller sit there when he was about to fight Dubois. He had more to say to and about Anthony Joshua than he did about Daniel Dubois. And then he got his ass kicked. We saw people right there, heard them right there on that platform, right? Anthony Joshua has Otto Wallin in front of him. That's his opponent. Deontay Wilder, his opponent, was Joseph Parker. The majority of the questions coming from people in the audience was about AJ versus Wilder. Anthony Joshua said out of his own mouth, I'm not worried about Deontay Wilder and nobody else. Who's in front of me is Otto Wallin. I got to get past him, and that's my opponent, and that's what I'm focused on. I'm not focused on anybody else. Deontay Wilder talked really confident that he was going to stop Joseph Parker. This wouldn't be even a match for him. By third round, he'll pretty much get Joseph out of there. And he talked more about Anthony Joshua than he did about his own opponent. He got his ass whooped. And like I said, they were already talking about AJ versus Wilder like it was a done deal. Funny thing is, people say if the fight don't happen, it's going to be because of AJ. Boy, did that go wrong. We saw racist Ryan Garcia, okay, versus Rolly Romero. People said, if anybody's going to lose, more likely it's going to be Rolly. They were already talking about, Haney versus Ryan rematch, and the whole time, Haney's going back and Ryan is going back and forth with Bill. He's going back and forth with Devin, but his opponent was Rolly. He went and then got his ass whooped. Now we see history repeat itself once again, because you got this guy, Armando Resendez versus Caleb Plant. Everybody's talking about Caleb Plant versus Jermall Charlo. I say this all the time. It is wise to focus on the opponent that you're fighting and not even allow thoughts to come into your head about another opponent. Not even thinking about the possibility, what's going to happen, or I'm just going to, you assume you're going to just walk through this guy. You get in there, and then what usually happens is these guys are better than you thought they were. And you think because of your star power, you think because of your skill set, it's just going to be one of those things where, eventually I'm going to break them down, they're going to crumble. We saw, now Tank Davis, he wasn't talking about another opponent, he's talking about retiring. But he basically was talking like he was going to go in there and chop Lamont Roach down. Now, yeah, he said Lamont Roach was better than Shakur, and he was better than, Keyshawn Davis and all of that, but we know that wasn't the case, where Lamont Roach's name wasn't coming up in the past at all. This was just an excuse for not fighting those guys. But Lamont Roach came in there and really fought. He really came in and fought better than what Tank thought he was going to do. And so we see how that fight went. Now, here's the situation with Caleb Plant. He lost to a smaller guy. Like I said, the size, you can see the size difference in the ring between the two of them. He kept a tight defense. He kept the pressure on, but he did it in a controlled way. He wasn't like a buzzsaw in there. He just kept busy. He's throwing a lot of punches, throwing punches off the spin-off, throwing punches off different angles, where he wasn't allowing Caleb Plant to get comfortable. So if he pivot, if he sidestep, whatever was going on, something's coming. And he was catching him clean. His speed bothered Caleb Plant. His timing and his speed bothered Caleb Plant. And we know Caleb Plant is not a volume puncher. He likes to pace himself. His biggest Achilles heel that we've seen is stamina. So even though he's able to finish the fight, and he has shown better stamina in his last two fights, even though he was tired, he was still able to go the distance and all. The thing is, if you throw a lot of punches, if you can bring that pressure, you're going to give Caleb Plant problems. See, this reminds me of when Marcos Maidana fought against Adrian Broner. I knew who Marcos Maidana was. I saw him when he lost to Devin Alexander as well. And people was going off of that. Oh, man, Devin beat him. Adrian going to do this and that. I'm like, we going to see. But I really think this dude is going to give Adrian problems to the point he might stop Adrian. Come on, Aries. Yo, Adrian is this. I'm like, listen, I don't give a fuck about who you like. I'm talking about skill for skill. This dude, just the way he fights, and y'all talking about he lost to Devin Alexander. Y'all like Adrian Broner to the point you're blinded. Are you not paying attention to the way Adrian Broner looked against Paulie Malignaggi? He was very tentative, and he fought very cautiously and outpointed Paulie. But he didn't go on there like fuck Paulie up and he didn't do what Sean Porter did to Paulie. Which is what, if Adrian really was what everybody thought he was, it would have looked very similar. He'd have put the beats on Paulie. He was cautious against a guy that can't punch. You understand what I'm saying? Now, think about it. When Inoue moved up and fought Fulton, who was the bigger guy? Fulton. Fulton doesn't have power. Inoue does. He has hand speed. He can match him with his boxing wits, IQ, everything. There's nothing that Fulton was better than him at. The problem was him being able to catch him, time him, do anything effective. And I said, I don't think Fulton is going to beat Inoue. Because the one thing that fighters usually have, or people are thought to have, in a fight, if they have nothing else, Fulton didn't have that. And that's a puncher's chance. Fulton didn't even have that. So I couldn't see him outboxing Inoue. But like I said, you never know what's going to happen come fight night. But my thoughts was I thought Inoue was going to beat Fulton. And he did. When it came to Adrian Broner and Marcos Maidana, if you're going to fight a guy that can't punch so cautiously and just, go for the easy, for the safe way to get the points win, what you going to do with a guy that's like a buzzsaw, that's all over you and can punch? And when that fight happened, I remember the same people with those same stupid looks on their faces. And I'm like, y'all see what the fuck I'm talking about now, don't you? Yo, I don't understand. I'm like, I know y'all don't motherfucking understand it because y'all speaking on some fan bullshit instead of looking at, that's what I look at, y'all. Even if I want to see a certain fighter win, I'm looking at the skill set of both fighters. So I'm not going to sit up here, well, I'm with you in spirit and all that. I can want you to win and whatever, but I'm going to be honest about what I think is going to happen. And I couldn't see Adrian Broner. We've never seen Adrian Broner go to war. We've never seen him have a tough fight where he really took punishment and gave punishment and had to, had that dog in him to, to survive like an onslaught of shots and really use a boxing IQ and adjust to everything his opponents do. We've never seen him do that. And I never really thought Adrian had that. I thought Adrian looked good against certain styles. And when he got in there with Marcos Maidana, you saw the difference. When he came up in weight and they asked him about fighting Paulie, do you think that the weight will be a factor? He said, what's weight? When you got skills, weight don't mean nothing. That's what he said. And he went from saying that to after he got beat by Sean Porter, I'm not going to keep going up fighting these big guys. What do you mean? What do you mean? He made it sound like he was doing it as a favor. This is your career, right? He went back to 140. He said, I'm undefeated at 140. I feel disrespected. Remember when he fought Mikey Garcia? I feel disrespected because people talking like they don't understand what I can do. And like, I ain't a 3-time world. He kept holding on to that 3-time world champion. I came from water and cornflakes and all. He kept bringing that. And it's like, yo, you keep harping on what you did. That's like when a person talk about old moments, like you can't create new ones. That's exactly where he was coming from. And he's never done anything. Never won any more titles or anything since his very first loss. But people never understood where I was coming from, even though they're watching the same thing I say happen. And when I look at a guy like Resendez and I look at what he does, I started watching his fights. I started looking at him and I'm like, okay. And I didn't know exactly how this fight would go. But I saw the way this kid fights, and I said, you know what? Caleb better be real careful. Was I wrong? They say he better be real careful. Simply because a lot of times the size advantage is the difference. But when you fight that basic style of fighting and you can stay disciplined, that's one thing I seen in this guy when I was watching him fight. And I'm not caught up on the big name situation. Having a bigger name don't mean you're the most skillful guy in the division. Now, everybody was looking at Canelo versus Plant when you say who's there at 168. Like, who's actually there with a name that's going to generate big money? You understand what I mean? In terms of a fighter being capable of beating someone, that's how you find out when you get in there and fight. So, this fight, like I said, this guy Resendez, man, he his timing, his speed, and his poise, his patience, and that tight defense where Caleb couldn't find openings. He couldn't create openings. Caleb looked uncomfortable because he had to move and couldn't land the shots he needed. And when you fight like that, you're gonna wind up punching yourself out simply because you're too active. And that's not what Caleb does. He wouldn't let Caleb get comfortable. He wouldn't let him get comfortable from long range, mid range, close range, and Caleb couldn't go in there and fight him like, I'm the bigger guy, I'm gonna muscle you around. That's not the way Caleb fights. So now when you look at his size advantage and say, yo, he should have been doing this and this, well, no. If you watch Caleb Plant fight, Caleb is a good fighter, but Caleb is one-dimensional. You see, he can't walk you down. It's not the same as hurting someone and then jumping on them. Caleb Plant is good with his style if you let him fight the way that he likes to fight. In terms of Caleb being able to adjust to opponents in different ways, walk you down, outfight you from any type of range and all that, that's not what Caleb Plant does. Now, if you look at who he lost to, Canelo, a guy who's going to come forward and bring pressure. Benavidez, a guy that can box and is going to come forward and bring pressure. Armando, a guy that can box, is going to come forward and bring pressure. Now, is it ironic that he lost to 3 people that bring pressure? You think that's just a coincidence? Nah. If they have a rematch, the same thing is probably going to happen. And if you think about it, did Caleb look really swift on his feet? Now, if it's a father time thing, we can't talk about no ring rust or nothing because, like I said, dude himself ain't making no excuses. And like he said, he paid a lot of money for this training camp. He had an excellent training camp. But hey, it's what I'm telling you. I believe it was the awkwardness. I believe that tight defense, and him coming in poise and sticking to his game plan. I just feel like Caleb didn't know how to fight him. And he couldn't figure out how to fight him. What do I do? What can I do different? I think if they have a rematch, the same thing is going to happen. And he might even knock Caleb out in the rematch. And if he don't knock him out, he'll probably beat him up really badly. Especially when no point in that fight was Caleb able to find success with anything. So I don't see a rematch going any different. I say rematch, same thing's going to happen. Because even if Caleb tried to get on his bicycle and move more, Caleb, people was like, oh, but I don't like how he kept lowering his hand down. Caleb always does that shit. I don't know what the hell these people are talking about. He throws that up jab, and he loves to throw that up jab. He keep his hand down. He'll feint. He'll lean forward. He'll make you move, then pop. He loved to shoot that up jab. It wasn't working, and this is what I'm saying. Caleb can't fight any other way other than the way he fights. So even if he gave more movement, you got to land punches. You got to be able to put, combinations together. He couldn't find openings. He couldn't do anything. It's just like if Bivol was to fight Canelo 10 times. I think Canelo would lose all 10 times. The same thing here. I just feel like his style is just, Caleb can't figure that shit out. Bigger, stronger, right? Naturally bigger, naturally stronger. It didn't mean anything. It did nothing. So, that fight against Charlo, not happening. Now, Charlo versus this guy, Lamons, or whatever. Listen, I just don't like that guy, man. Like his character, his personality. I just don't like that guy. I wanted to see him get his ass kicked, and he did. Okay, so Jermall went in there and basically smacked him around. He pretty much, hurt him, dropped him several times, buckled him, his face started falling apart. Referee stopped the fight in the corner, and he, yeah, right, man. All the bravado, shaking your head, nose, sticking your arms out and trying to pretend you're not hurt. Okay, cool, but you got your ass kicked, man. And he needed to get punished like that. He didn't get his ass beat the way I would like to have beat his ass. But I don't like arrogant people, man. Like when people just like talk and they're not as good. It's one thing for you to be every bit as good as you say you are. This dude got some. Look, he has some boxing skills, but I don't think he has a sturdy chin, and I don't think he's consistent enough to fight a disciplined fight. So there's potential there, but I feel like he got too much fucking ego to really understand he's not as good as I can say as he could be, because I feel like his ego. He thinks that shit that he has is enough. Jermall is coming off a 1.5 year layoff. Last fight he had, he came off with 2 years. Jermall needs to be, I would say, more active, for sure. But Jermall is not trying to just take just any fight. He wants the Canelo fight. Now, the thing is, Canelo, if he fights Crawford, he has to get through Crawford. People got mixed opinions of, it's like any other fight, of who they think is going to win this fight. Now, he's saying he wants the Canelo fight, which means Jermall believes Canelo's going to beat Crawford. Now, if Crawford was to win, then it would be obvious that Jermall should want to fight the winner, not the loser. And that would be, so if it would be Crawford, then yeah. The thing is, if that would be the case, Crawford shouldn't have any excuse to fight him, because Crawford said he wanted 2 more fights. Crawford said he wanted a rematch with Errol Spence and Canelo. At this point, if Crawford was to win, Canelo was your 1 fight. More than likely, there'll be a rematch. If he beat him twice, that will be his 2 fights. He probably would just retire after that. Unless Turkey, somebody get involved and this put the type of money up with Crawford's like, hell yeah, okay, I'll take that fight. They put really big money up. There's no need to not have it. Now, if Canelo beats Crawford, being that it's for Canelo's belts, there probably won't be a rematch for the most part. So Canelo's not talking about retiring. Canelo would have no reason to not fight Jermall Charlo. So the reality is, you focus on the fighters that's in front of you. Not the second and third pick, but the guy that, no, this is who I'm fighting, this is who I'm focused on. That's what any smart fighter would do. I think that, if any lesson was learned, people can take things, take what out of a fight that they get. But I feel like one of the lessons learned should be exactly what I just said. Focus on the guy in front of you. And then 2, don't underestimate people just because you are not familiar with who they are. Because you find really quick, it's like when I posted, the story of Kirkland Lang. Because this is a guy that when you look at him, you'll go, man, this dude, he had skill, man, this dude was talented. But you look at the drawbacks, you look at the things that held him back. And this is a guy that beat Roberto Duran. And this was a prime Roberto. He was only 30 years old. This was no old man Duran. And he beat Roberto Duran. And the funny thing is, hardly anybody knew who the fuck this guy was. So even when I posted it and people saw it, there's people that never heard of this guy. They didn't even know that this guy fought Roberto Duran. Yeah, so when you see one of those losses on Duran's record, this was Kirkland Lang. And for people that didn't know him, the assumption was, this had to be when Duran got old. Nope. No, this was 30-year-old Roberto Duran. And Kirkland Lang beat him. And there was no robbery. There was no, it could have went either way. He just straight up beat Roberto Duran. But we're not going to make excuses for anybody. I know I certainly don't. And I respect Caleb Plant for not making excuses. Just take the fucking L and keep it pushing and get back in the gym, man. Like I said, I just think that style is just going to bother Caleb all the time. Because, like I said, the more active Caleb has to be, the more he gets tired. And when Caleb gets tired, it shows. When Caleb gets tired, he barely throws anything. He goes into defensive mode. And I just think this is a lose-lose situation for Caleb to rematch him. Now, I'm not saying he shouldn't, because that's what a fighter wants to do. You want to beat the guy that beat you. But if you can't change anything about yourself, I mean, you put yourself in a situation where you're pretty much going to have the same fight. When Mildred Taylor fought Chavez, Mildred Taylor, he had that fight won. Richard Steele made one of the worst stoppages in boxing history. But physically, Chavez, they both went to the hospital, but Mildred swallowed 8 pints of his own blood. And Mildred Taylor, broken eye socket. I mean, he was far more damaged than Chavez was. And that fight took a lot out of Mildred Taylor. He was never the same after that. And if you go watch the rematch, you can see where it's like, okay, we fought each other. and he stopped Meldrick in 8 rounds, and I think the rematch he stopped him in the 8th round. When you watch that fight, that's the one thing Meldrick Taylor always did. He can box, but instead of depending on his boxing skills, his ring smarts, and IQ, Meldrick wanted to bang. Meldrick wanted to stand there and do what it makes it easier for his opponent. And Meldrick didn't have that type of punching power for the type of style that he fought. You see, this is why it's important when you hear me say a person keeping it basic, keeping a tight defense, and sticking with their game plan, it's vital, man. Because when you fight off ego instead of off of skill, the worst happens to you. Just like, let's go back, Errol Spence saying, I could box and jab and move and all that, but that's boring to me. I like to go in there and mix it up, Well, if he had the type of ring IQ, if he had those natural instincts to go into his boxing mode and do things in a different way, be that smart boxer puncher and not stand there and just go for the kill, he would have did better against Terrence Crawford. He basically just kept trying the same things over and over, and look at how the fight went. So these are the things that I look at. I don't care nothing about who you want to win, man. That's not what it's about. We're not talking about who we wanted to win, and that's a different conversation. When we judge fights or we give our opinions on things, a fight can go completely different from the way you think it's going to go. But when you look at two fighters and you clearly can see, if you understand what you're watching, it's not hard for me. Certain fights I can't, for the most part, most of the fights I can't really judge is when I'm not really too fond of one of the two fighters, or I just haven't seen either fighter really face the type of style that each guy's going to present to the other. So I really can't really, sometimes it's just, and then when you look at consistencies in a fight or inconsistencies, then it's different. But certain styles, I just look at and I get that feeling. When I feel it, I'm never wrong when I got that feeling. Like, I think this guy's going to win. Or I think this guy's going to lose because of blah, blah. It usually plays out pretty much the way I say it. Only going by what I see both fighters do. Once again, you don't know what is going to happen come fight night. Remember when Tim Bradley fought Provodnikov, right? Tim Bradley took some bombs in that fight. Tim Bradley fought the stupidest fight of his career. But if you ask people what was the best fight of his career, they're probably going to tell you the Provodnikov fight based on what they want to call the most exciting fight. It was a stupid way for Tim Bradley to fight. And that fight is what made him make his mind up to decide to retire. What did he say? I don't want to do any more damage to my brain than I've already done. So, if you're going to rematch a person and nothing about you changes and you pretty much lost, like decisively, what's the purpose of the rematch? Because even the rematch, he's showing heart though. He's showing ego. Let me put it like this to make it more clear for somebody that might be listening to me scratching their head right now. If you can go to your right playing basketball, but you can't go to your left, isn't it common sense? I need to start going to my left. I need to be able to mix it up. If you can shoot 15-footers, right? Don't you think it's best to work on everything so you don't have any weaknesses in your game? Don't you think you will become a better rebounder, better at steals, better at block shots, right? Better at passing, versus just depending on what you have. Because now, when you get to that opponent where that team can double team you and they're pushing you, trying to make you shoot faster than you want to, a pass, they're doubling up on you, they cause you to turn the ball over. Now all of a sudden that skill set, those skill sets that you didn't think was important, you realize they were, but you're not good enough to do them. Same thing as a fighter. Okay, if you realize, like if Caleb Plant, let's put it like this, if he knows what I just said, which is factual, look at his fights. If he knows and his team knows, all right, Caleb, you're not good at walking opponents down. We need to get you to that point where you can do both. We want to get you to that point where, you're just as good slipping punches coming forward as you are going backwards. And mind you, a whole lot of that fight was at a stalemate. But Caleb didn't use his size and strength. He didn't resort to that because he couldn't. You see? So, if he understands what his weaknesses are, Caleb is not a new fighter. He's been around for a long time. He's got a lot of miles on his body. Can he change? I don't know. But if he can't, he's going to lose again. Just like if Errol Spence can't change. What's the purpose of his rematch with Crawford? And he hasn't had that rematch, and he already told everybody he'll come back when he's ready. So, the problem with the common idiot is they'll say, oh, he's scared, he don't want that smoke. Scared has nothing to do with it. Sometimes you need somebody that, hey, you don't need this rematch, man. Physically, you're not ready. Mentally, you're not ready. You need to get yourself back right. And you got to get back to that point. And if you can't get over those hurdles mentally, what's the purpose of us sticking you back in there just to get your brains half beat out again? Just to say, oh, that nigga got heart. And this is where people are not paying attention to what's really real. So, yeah, there'll be no fight between Caleb Plant and Jermall Charlo. Now, if they was to make that fight happen anyway, how would they build that? What is Caleb going to now say, I'm better this fight than I was last fight? I'm more focused on this time? Or what are you going to, well, I was really distracted because I really wanted the Charlo fight. I was looking past, like, what excuse they going to make? I just don't think that, it's wise to focus on anybody except for the person that's in front of you. And just for the record, before I close, let me say this, right? Well, I don't care about racist Ryan. Y'all already know how I feel about that motherfucker. I don't give a shit about Tiafimo either. But because the Haneys made a case out of, well, they'll call off the lawsuit only if Ryan Garcia accepts the rematch. Okay. You don't hear anything about Ryan fighting anybody anytime soon. Now, does Devin Haney want to sit back and wait for Ryan again? Or does he want to keep active? Which means, if this little big mouth asshole Tiafimo, who ended up apologizing to Turkey for the things he said, that might be the fight that you get instead. It's Tiafimo versus Devin. Now, whatever happens. But regardless, Bill said, regardless to how long it takes, Ryan is going to have to fight Devin because that was part of the agreement, them calling off the lawsuit. Which means, even if Ryan looks like shit in his next fight, and it not happens, but in other words, there should not be anybody before Devin. If Ryan takes that time off, the thing with Devin is, whoever he fights, he needs to make sure he wins. Because if he loses, it still doesn't mean that the rematch doesn't happen with Ryan. It just means that it means that much less to anybody watching. Because both of them got their ass whooped. You see what I mean? So, when it comes to things like that, man, it's like this sport, man, like the thing that's going on in this sport is just so ass backwards that it's just like, when people stop supporting stupidity, you force people the powers that be to make the necessary changes. Why? Because they realize their product is failing. And it's more than just putting names together. It's people need to have honor. They need to have respect, self-respect. They need to, have camaraderie for the people that they're fighting against. But nah, it's all about, childish, stupid nonsense, beef out of nowhere, and we're talking about things that have nothing to do with what's actually going on, all these allegations that people make about each other, and all the excuses when somebody lose, and everything that makes this sport gets it to the point where people don't even want to watch it. That type of stuff turns me off, and it's childish. But it is what it is. So, if Canelo and Terrence Crawford do fight, well, maybe that will be the next fight for Jermall Charlo. And like I said, now if Crawford was to win, there'll be a rematch between Canelo, unless Canelo decides he just don't want the rematch. But if Canelo wins, more than likely he's not going to fight Crawford again. And especially if he knocks him out, or if he just wins decisively regardless. Now, if it's the type of fight where it's very close and Canelo gets the win, you might get a rematch, but he doesn't have to. He doesn't have to. And Jermall Charlo just might be the sleeper in this whole thing, because, see, he fight against Canelo. Canelo's the favorite to win. He fights against Crawford. Crawford's the favorite to win. But if either one of those guys look bad in this fight against each other, well, if you're only as good as your last performance, they're going to look at Jermall Charlo and go, yo, I think Jermall might beat either one of them. Doesn't matter about what we think. But the point is, that's how the pendulum swings. And you go from being the underdog to, nah, I think he's going to win, because look at his fight compared to their fight. And to be honest with you, man, I don't even care about the Crawford and Canelo fight, really. I get, just like I got so sick of hearing about Anthony Joshua versus Wilder and the fight never happening, and this person versus that person. At some point, it's just like, all right, whatever. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I'm not going to be in here banging holes in the wall because of that. But Jermall Charlo might be the sleeper in this whole thing. He got the skills. And this is a dude that wasn't in the ring, for a year and a half. I think, too, especially he get his jab more involved like he used to. Just, use his jab more to keep that distance, man, and keep his opponent under his punches and work his shots off. Because a couple of times he threw that right hand, he threw the overhand, but he threw it kind of, he threw his overhand kind of, like he put everything on it, but without setting it up, without the jab. And it was telegraphed. It was able to be telegraphed. But dude didn't make him pay. He just got out the way of it. So, little things like that. But sharpness is keeping in the ring, keeping the training going. But you have to have a purpose. Like I said, Jermall Charlo's 35 now as well. He's not going to just taking fights just to take fights. Man. People like to talk about pound for pound greats and all-time greats and all that. At some point, man, you just realize all that bullshit. I'm only focused on who I'm fighting, and I can only do what I can do. Andre Ward retired undefeated. Everybody don't think he's pound for pound the greatest fighter ever. In fact, there's many people they'll put over Andre Ward. So if you walk around thinking you're going to please everybody or satisfy everybody or get everybody's vote, you're being delusional. And I just feel like right now, Jermall Charlo, just like last time, he wasn't in the ring for 2 years. He looked great when he came back. Jermall Charlo's a sharp fighter, man. And I feel like for him to just keep sharp, stay sharp, keep doing what he's doing, Jermall focused, in shape, everything like he's supposed to. Shit, that motherfucker fuck around and wind up beating Terrence Crawford and wind up beating or Canelo, whoever. And you don't know what nobody's gonna be able to say, which it doesn't matter what they say, because you always have excuse makers. But all that, he was just too big. Well, guess what? You've had smaller guys win over big guys throughout the history of this sport. And this guy Armando just did the same thing against the much bigger Caleb Plant. And like I said, you can see the size difference. But hey, man, skills pay the bills. We've been telling you this forever. But we'll see how things go. Anyway, Talk to me in the comment section. Never fall in love with lies. Remember, the truth brings hate out of people, and I will catch y'all on the next video.